5 people disappeared, no answers, no witnesses, and decades later, the towns they vanished from still haven't recovered. Some disappearances fade with time. Others become part of the town itself. These are 5 real cases that still haunt the places where they happened. Nightmare 1. Marshall, Minnesota, 2008. The last thing Brandon Swanson said on the phone was, "Oh shit." Then the line went dead, and nobody ever heard from him again. Brandon was 19 years old when he disappeared in May of 2008 near the small town of Marshall, Minnesota. He had just finished celebrating the end of classes with friends and was driving home late at night when his car slid into a ditch on a rural gravel road. At least, that's what he believed. He called his parents around 1:30 in the morning and told them he wasn't hurt, but needed help finding his location. The problem was Brandon thought he was near Lind, Minnesota, when he was actually miles away near Porter. His parents drove around searching while Brandon stayed on the phone, trying to guide them using distant lights and gravel roads as landmarks. For nearly an hour, his father stayed connected with him. The conversation sounded normal. Brandon wasn't panicked. If anything, he sounded annoyed and tired. Eventually, he decided to walk toward what he thought was the town of Lind while staying on the phone with his dad. Then suddenly, oh shit. Silence. The call disconnected. His father immediately tried calling back. No answer. Search teams later discovered Brandon had likely fallen into the Yellow Medicine River in the darkness. Investigators found footprints leading into the water and back out again. After that, the trail vanished. No body, no phone, no sign of Brandon anywhere. The strangest part is how complete the disappearance was. It's as if he simply stopped existing after those final words. Even now, people in Marshall still talk about that phone call because everyone wonders the same thing. What made Brandon suddenly stop? Some disappearances happen in seconds. One wrong step, one wrong turn, and someone is simply gone. But the next case is different because this time, an entire family disappeared together. Nightmare 2. Eufaula, Oklahoma, 2009. When the Jameson family vanished, they left almost everything behind. Their truck, their wallets, their phones, even their dog. Bobby and Sherilyn Jameson lived with their 6-year-old daughter Madison in Eufaula, Oklahoma, a small town surrounded by long wooded stretches and isolated roads. In October of 2009, the family drove into the Sans Bois Mountains looking at land they reportedly planned to purchase. Then they disappeared. A few days later, hunters found their pickup truck abandoned deep in the woods. Inside the truck were the family's IDs, cell phones, jackets over $30,000 in cash, and their dog, barely alive. That alone made the case disturbing. But then investigators discovered security footage from the family's home taken before they vanished. The video showed Bobby and Sherilyn silently loading the truck for nearly an hour. Neither spoke. Neither acknowledged the other. They moved almost like sleepwalkers. People who watched the footage described it as deeply unsettling. Then came the theories: drugs, cult involvement, mental illness, murder. No explanation ever fully fit. 4 years later, skeletal remains belonging to all 3 family members were found less than 3 miles from where the truck had been abandoned. But investigators still couldn't determine exactly how they died. To this day, nobody really knows what happened in those woods, and locals around Eufaula still avoid talking about the Jamesons too long, because the deeper you look into the case, the stranger it becomes. The scariest disappearances aren't always the ones with no clues. Sometimes it's the ones with too many. If you're enjoying these stories, subscribe to Nightmare Central, because the next disappearance left behind something even worse than evidence. A voicemail. Nightmare 3. Castaic, California, 2013. Bryce Laspisa should have been home in a few hours. Instead, he vanished, and nobody understands why. Bryce was 19 years old and driving from Northern California to his parents' home near Castaic Lake. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Then his behavior started changing. Friends later said Bryce had been acting strangely in the days leading up to his disappearance, emotionally distant, almost disconnected. During the drive home, Bryce repeatedly stopped his car for hours at a time without explanation. His parents became worried after roadside assistance reported Bryce sitting alone in his vehicle long after help had arrived. When his mother spoke to him on the phone, he insisted he was fine, but something clearly wasn't right. Hours later, Bryce's car was found overturned near Castaic Lake. The rear window had been kicked out. Blood was found inside the vehicle, but Bryce himself was gone. Search teams combed the lake for days. Nothing, no body, no confirmed sightings, just questions. The case became even stranger when investigators discovered Bryce had likely been sitting near the lake for hours before the crash, as if he was waiting or deciding something. His parents still believe Bryce is alive somewhere, but more than a decade later, no one knows what happened after he climbed out of that wrecked car and disappeared into the darkness. Sometimes people disappear suddenly. Other times, it feels like they slowly drift away before they're finally gone. The next case may be one of the strangest disappearances ever recorded in a small American town, because it happened in broad daylight. Nightmare 4. Springfield, Missouri, 1992. 3 women vanished from the same house overnight. No signs of forced entry, no struggle, no answers. Cheryl Levitt lived in Springfield, Missouri with her daughter, Susie. On June 7, 1992, Susie and her friend Stacy returned to the house after graduation parties. By the next morning, all 3 were gone. Their purses remained inside. Cars still parked outside. The television was on. One of the strangest details involved the front porch light. It had been broken. A neighbor reportedly cleaned up the shattered glass before realizing it might be evidence. Then there was the voicemail. Several people connected to the case reported receiving strange messages shortly after the women disappeared. Messages that were accidentally erased before investigators could hear them. To this day, the case remains unsolved. No bodies, no arrests, no confirmed suspects, just theories. And in Springfield, people still talk about how impossible the disappearance feels, because 3 adults don't just vanish from a house without someone seeing something, but somehow they did. Most disappearances leave behind confusion. This last case left behind something worse. A town full of people convinced they were close to the truth, but never close enough. Nightmare 5. Haverhill, New Hampshire, 2004. Maura Murray crashed her car on a rural road in Haverhill, New Hampshire on a freezing February night, and then she disappeared. A local bus driver stopped to help after the crash. Maura reportedly told him she had already called roadside assistance, but he noticed something strange. She seemed nervous, almost desperate for him to leave. He drove home and called police anyway, but by the time officers arrived only minutes later, Maura was gone. No footprints leading away from the scene. No signs of abduction. Nothing. The woods surrounding the road were heavily searched. Dogs tracked her scent briefly, then lost it. Over the years, theories exploded online. Did she run away intentionally? Did someone pick her up? Did she die in the woods? No theory fully explains everything, and that's why the case still haunts people, because there's a terrifying simplicity to it. A woman crashes her car on an empty road and vanishes before police arrive. Even now, nearly every resident in Haverhill knows exactly where it happened, and many of them still slow down when they pass that curve at night. Just in case, something even scarier than this nightmare is not watching more videos from Nightmare Central. This was Nightmares of Small Towns. Sleep carefully,